Ward estate sat high above the city, a mansion so vast and silent it almost felt haunted. Once it was filled with laughter, music, and the smell of fresh lilies. Now only the echo of rain against the tall windows remained. Inside, Liam Ward, 36, billionaire CEO of Ward Innovations, stood in the middle of the grand hall, a man surrounded by luxury yet utterly alone. His empire built half the city skyline, but grief had stolen something money couldn't buy: peace. He looked down at the framed photograph in his hand, a woman's smile, soft, radiant, alive. His late wife, Emily. The world called him brilliant, ruthless, untouchable. But none of them knew the truth, that since the accident 3 years ago, Liam hadn't slept a full night or played the piano she once loved. The housekeeper said he rarely spoke more than a few words a day. His life was efficiency and silence. Until the morning, everything began to change. The agency had sent someone new, a temporary maid, last-minute replacement. Her name, Maya Ellis. She arrived late, rain-soaked, breathless, apologizing as she clutched her cleaning bag like a lifeline. The butler frowned at her worn shoes and faint accent, clearly unimpressed. But Liam, standing at the top of the staircase, simply said, "Let her work. Just keep the West Wing closed." The West Wing, his wife's wing. No one was allowed there. Maya nodded silently. She didn't ask questions. Her first steps into the mansion felt like walking into a museum of forgotten memories. Spotless floors, covered furniture, air heavy with dust and regret. But where others saw wealth, Maya saw loneliness. She moved quietly through the rooms, humming softly as she cleaned. It wasn't a song Liam recognized, but somehow the sound drifted all the way to his study. He froze. No one had sung in this house since Emily died. That afternoon, Liam descended the staircase, something he hadn't done in weeks. He found Maya polishing the grand chandelier, sunlight spilling through the tall windows, making her brown skin glow like honey. She didn't notice him at first. When she did, she nearly dropped the cloth. "I'm sorry, sir," she stammered. "I didn't mean to." "What were you singing?" he asked, his voice low but curious. She hesitated. "Just something my mother used to hum when she worked. She said every home should hear joy once in a while." Liam's lips twitched, the ghost of a smile. "Then your mother's house must have been noisy." "It was alive," Maya replied softly, returning to her work. And for the first time in 3 years, Liam didn't feel like walking away. Days passed, rain gave way to sunlight, and the mansion began to change. Curtains opened, windows let in air. The scent of lavender replaced the stale stillness. Liam found himself watching her sometimes, the way she straightened picture frames with care, or stopped to admire old books in his library. She was respectful, yet bold enough to speak when no one else dared. One afternoon, he caught her in the west corridor, the forbidden one. Her hand hovered over the door handle, drawn by curiosity. "That room's closed," Liam said sharply from behind her. Maya turned, startled. "I'm sorry, sir." "I didn't know." "You did," he replied, but there was no real anger in his tone, only pain. She lowered her eyes. "Then maybe it's not the room that needs to stay closed. Maybe it's the heart that's still locked inside it." The words hit harder than she could have known. Liam didn't reply. He simply walked past her, but that night, for the first time since Emily's death, he stood at that same door, hand trembling over the handle. He didn't open it, not yet, but he thought about it. The next evening, he found Maya in the music room, dusting the grand piano that hadn't been touched in years. "Careful," he murmured. "That was, hers." Maya looked up, her eyes gentle. "Then it deserves to be remembered, not left to die." Before he could stop her, she pressed one key. The note rang pure and haunting, echoing through the silence like a ghost sigh. Liam closed his eyes. The sound hurt, but it also healed. He sat down beside her, fingers trembling as they hovered above the keys. "She used to play," he whispered. "Said music makes pain speak the truth." Maya smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time to let the truth talk again." He didn't answer. just played the first hesitant notes of Emily's favorite song. The melody filled the room, cracked and imperfect, but real. When it ended, neither spoke. For the first time, Liam felt something he hadn't in years, the faint stir of life returning, and he knew exactly when it started. The day Maya Ellis walked into his house. Sometimes the people who enter our lives quietly, the ones we least expect, end up changing everything. But what happens when the secrets they carry threaten to break it all again? Before we continue, take a second to hit that subscribe button. It truly helps us keep creating these cinematic stories. Your support keeps this channel going. Days turned into weeks, and something quiet but undeniable began to grow inside the mansion. Liam Ward, the man once defined by silence, now found reasons to linger, to walk through the halls where Maya worked, to listen for her soft humming that had somehow become the heartbeat of the house. Maya noticed it too, the way he started leaving his office door open, how he'd pause by the kitchen doorway while she brewed tea, pretending to read messages that didn't exist. The walls of his home were beginning to breathe again, and for the first time in years, so was he. It started with small things. A cup of tea placed near his study, though he never asked for one. A vase of fresh flowers appearing in the hall where his late wife's portrait once stood. And one morning, sunlight filtering through glass, Maya caught him standing before that same portrait. Not with pain, but peace. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "You changed the flowers." "They were wilting," she said softly. "I thought she deserved something alive." Liam studied her, not the maid, not the employee, but the woman who somehow saw straight through the walls he'd spent years building. "Emily loved lilies," he said after a moment. "I know," Maya replied, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You kept her letters in the drawer by the piano." He froze. "You went through my things?" "I dusted," she said gently, "not to pry, but because sometimes grief hides behind dust, not secrets." He wanted to be angry, but he couldn't, because in her words he heard something he hadn't in years. Honesty. That evening, the two of them sat in the garden behind the estate, where the air smelled of rain and roses. Maya told him about her life. Not in detail, just fragments. That she'd grown up in the south side of the city, that she'd lost her mother young, that she'd spent years working in houses that looked perfect, but felt hollow. And for once, Liam listened. Not as a CEO, not as a man used to control, but as someone simply human. "You make it sound easy," he said quietly, "to live with so little." Maya smiled faintly. "Sometimes little is enough, especially when it's real." He looked at her then, really looked. The warmth in her eyes, the strength in her stillness. For the first time in years, he didn't see loss. He saw life. But every piece carries a shadow, and Maya's had a name. That weekend, as she cleaned the library, a letter fell from one of the old books she'd stacked. It was addressed to Ward Estate, personal and confidential. She froze when she saw the handwriting. Her own. Her breath hitched. It wasn't meant to be found. She'd written it a year ago, when she first applied for the cleaning job, addressed to herself as a reminder of why she'd come. "Don't forget what you're here for, Maya. He's not just your employer. He's the man whose company took everything from your family." Her heart pounded as she shoved the letter back inside her apron, glancing toward the hallway. Because if Liam ever discovered the truth, that she hadn't come here by accident, that she had a reason deeper than work, everything they'd built would collapse. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat by her small window room in the servants' wing, staring at the distant glow of Liam's study light. He'd trusted her, let her in, and now she was betraying him just by staying. Her mother's words echoed in her head. "Justice doesn't always come from anger, Maya. Sometimes it comes from mercy." But could she show mercy to the man whose company's negligence destroyed her family's life? The fire that had killed her brother, the fire caused by a Ward Innovations project, had been quietly buried years ago. The same year Liam stopped playing piano. The next morning, as she entered the study with a tray of coffee, she noticed something new. The West Wing door, the one that was always locked, was open. Her heart skipped. Inside, dust drifted through golden light, settling on covered furniture, old photographs, and memories sealed in silence. And at the center of it all stood Liam. Not cold, not broken, just tired. He turned slowly when she entered. "I thought I'd finally face it," he said quietly, "but I couldn't do it alone." Maya hesitated. "You don't have to." He nodded once, then pulled away the sheet covering the piano. Beneath the dust, its black lacquer still gleamed faintly. He pressed one key. The sound was imperfect, raw, human. Then he said something that caught her completely off guard. "I never thanked you for reminding me what life sounds like." Her chest tightened. "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do," he said, stepping closer, "because I'd forgotten what it was like to feel something real. Until you walked in." The silence between them grew warm, electric, fragile. And for one impossible moment, Maya wished she could forget the truth. Forget why she'd come. Forget the lie that tied her to his pain. Because standing there in the middle of the life he'd locked away, she realized something terrifying. She was falling for him. She entered his home with a secret, one that could destroy him. But what happens when the man you're supposed to hate becomes the one person who makes you feel alive again? If you were Maya, would you confess the truth or protect the man you've grown to love? The next few weeks felt like something out of a dream. The mansion that once echoed with silence now carried laughter. Quiet, rare, but real. Liam Ward wasn't the same man anymore. The walls he'd built around his heart were cracking, and through those cracks Maya had brought in light. He started spending mornings in the kitchen instead of his office, afternoons in the garden instead of the boardroom, and at night he'd sometimes find himself standing outside her small room, hand hovering near the door, just to listen to her hum softly before bed. He told himself it was nothing, but he knew it was everything. Then one night, the illusion shattered. Liam had left his office early, a rare smile on his face, thinking about asking Maya to join him for dinner. But when he passed by the library, he heard voices, low, urgent, her voice, and a man's. He froze by the door. "I found it," Maya whispered. "Files, payment logs, proof the company paid off the investigation. But I can't bring them out yet, not without him noticing." The man's reply was sharp. "Then hurry. You're not there to clean. You're there to finish what you started." Liam's chest tightened. His hand trembled against the doorframe. He pushed it open. Maya spun around, eyes wide. The phone slipped from her hand. "Liam, who were you talking to?" His voice was calm. Too calm. "No one." It's not what you think, but he already knew. The tone, the urgency, the betrayal. He stepped closer, his gaze cold. "How long?" She swallowed. "Please, just let me explain." "How long, Maya?" he snapped, the calm shattering into fury. "Since the day you walked into my house pretending to care? Since the moment you smiled and made me believe you were different?" Tears welled in her eyes. "You were different. I didn't come here to hurt you." "Then why are you lying to me now?" She broke. "Because I had no choice." The words hit the room like thunder. "I didn't come here for money," she said, voice trembling. "I came for answers. My brother died in the factory fire 5 years ago, the one your company buried under fake reports. My family lost everything while your board walked away clean. I thought you were behind it." Liam froze. The color drained from his face. "The Southridge fire," he whispered. She nodded, tears streaming. "I needed to know what kind of man could destroy lives and sleep at night." His voice was barely a breath. "And what did you find?" Her eyes met his. "Not a monster. Just a man who stopped living the same day I did. Silence. Heavy, unforgiving." He turned away, jaw tight, pain twisting through him. "You should leave." "Liam, now!" Her breath hitched. "Please, just let me explain." "I said leave!" His shout echoed through the mansion. The same walls that once sheltered warmth, now swallowing it whole. She stood there shaking, before turning toward the door. The rain outside was merciless, but not as cold as the look he gave her as she walked away. That night, Liam sat alone in the dark, staring at the fire he hadn't lit in years. He'd trusted her, led her into the one place he thought was still safe, his heart, and she'd come here carrying the ashes of a tragedy he didn't even know he'd caused. He poured a glass of whiskey, but his hand wouldn't stop trembling. Her words kept replaying in his mind. "My brother died in the fire your company buried." He had heard about the Southridge case years ago, an explosion at one of their partner facilities. His board had handled it before he could intervene. He'd signed the closure reports without question, and now he wondered what those papers had really covered up. Meanwhile, Maya sat in her tiny apartment across town, drenched from the storm, her hands shaking as she clutched her phone. The man she'd spoken to earlier, her contact, a journalist, kept calling. She didn't answer, because she couldn't. Not anymore. What started as revenge now felt like heartbreak. She'd gone into his home with hate and come out with love, a love tangled in lies and loss. And now she was paying the price for both. The next morning, Liam arrived at his office for the first time in months. His assistant looked startled. He hadn't set foot there since his wife's death. "Pull every record on the Southridge fire," he ordered. "Internal reports, settlements, insurance claims. Everything." "Sir, those files are sealed under the board's confidentiality agreement?" "Then unseal them," he snapped, "or I'll dissolve the agreement myself." Hours passed, file after file, signature after signature, and finally the truth surfaced. The explosion wasn't an accident, it was negligence. Faulty safety equipment supplied by a contractor the board had personally approved to cut costs. And when the families demanded justice, the board falsified reports and paid hush money, all under his name. Liam sat back in disbelief, the weight of guilt crashing over him. He whispered her name, Maya, because now he understood everything. She hadn't betrayed him. She'd revealed the truth. She walked into his life seeking justice. He thought she'd broken his heart. But what if she was the only one brave enough to show him the truth? The truth broke him before it set him free. For days, Liam barely left his office. The same board members who once praised him now avoided his calls. The same empire that bore his name now felt like a monument to everything he'd ignored. He stared at the photographs of the victims, faces of the workers, families left behind. Among them was one he recognized now. Elias Jameson, age 26. Maya's brother. The file said negligence due to failed inspection. The inspection he'd signed off on. Liam's throat tightened. He pressed his hands over his eyes, whispering, "I'm so sorry." It wasn't just an accident. It was his burden, one he'd been too blind to see. That night, he called an emergency board meeting. 12 people sat around the long mahogany table, confusion turning to alarm when Liam entered. Gone was the cold executive in tailored suits. His tie hung loose, eyes bloodshot, expression carved from guilt and fury. "Gentlemen," he began, voice steady, "we're reopening the Southridge investigation." One of the older members laughed nervously. "That case was settled years ago. Why stir old ghosts?" "Because those ghosts were people," Liam snapped. "People we failed. People your bonuses were built on." The room fell silent. He threw the file onto the table. Contracts, falsified safety reports, bribe logs. "I signed these because I trusted you. You told me it was an accident, but you lied. To me, to the families, to the world." "Careful, Liam," one of them sneered. "This company survives on reputation." "No," Liam said, standing taller. "It survives on truth. And I won't build my life, or hers, on lies anymore." He slid a folder across the table. "You have two choices. Resign quietly, or face a federal investigation." "I've already contacted the press," murmurs erupted. Faces turned pale. Within hours, the boardroom that once ruled him fell apart. One resignation after another. Liam walked out into the night, rain pelting his face, but for the first time in years, he felt clean. 2 days later, the story broke. Billionaire CEO reopens investigation into company cover-up. Families of Southridge fire to receive justice after 5 years. Reporters flooded his mansion gates, but Liam didn't care. He'd lost everything that didn't matter and found the one thing that did. But she was gone. Maya hadn't answered any of his calls. The small apartment she rented was empty. The landlord said she'd left without a word. It was like she'd vanished, the same way she came, quietly, completely. Weeks passed. The mansion was spotless again, but emptier than ever. He stopped pouring whiskey, stopped pretending the silence didn't hurt. Then one evening, he found something on the kitchen counter. A small envelope, no return name, just a faint scent of lavender and rain. Inside was a note written in the handwriting he'd memorized. "You did what my brother never got. You told the truth. I didn't come to fall in love with you, Liam, but I did. And maybe when all the noise settles, you'll find me again. Not as a maid, not as a ghost from your past, but as the woman who never stopped believing you could be good." Maya, his hand trembled. He smiled, small, broken, but real. And for the first time in months, he knew exactly what he needed to do. The next morning, he drove 3 hours out of the city to the quiet coastal town where the Southridge Memorial had been rebuilt. Families gathered there each year, laying flowers for the lives lost. And there she was, standing by the memorial wall, a white rose in her hand, the wind tugging softly at her hair. She looked peaceful, untouchable. Liam stopped a few feet away. "I didn't think you'd want to see me." Maya turned, eyes filled with both pain and warmth. "I didn't think you'd come." He smiled faintly. "I had to. You were right. About everything. I let my company become a machine that hurt people. That hurt you. And I don't expect forgiveness. But I had to try." She studied him quietly. "You didn't have to reopen the case. You could have buried it again, like everyone else." "I buried enough," he said softly. "It's time I build something that lives." Her expression softened, tears glistening. "You changed everything, Liam." He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, you did. You walked into my house to clean the floors, and you ended up cleaning the parts of me I didn't even know were broken." For a moment, neither spoke. Just the sound of waves, the soft hum of wind through the trees. Then she smiled and faint, trembling. "You always did have a way with words. And you," he murmured, brushing a tear from her cheek, "always had a way of making them mean something." He leaned in, slow, hesitant. And this time when he kissed her, it wasn't out of guilt or grief. It was out of gratitude, out of love. The kind of love that doesn't fix you, but frees you. The world moved on, but he didn't want to. Months after that day at the memorial, Liam didn't return to the old mansion. He sold it. The halls, the chandeliers, the empire of silence. In its place, he built something smaller, quieter, human. A rehabilitation center on the same land where the Southridge plant once stood. A place not for profit, but for healing, for families who'd lost everything, for workers who'd been forgotten. And on the plaque by the front gate, engraved in clean silver letters, were the words, "Dedicated to those who taught me that redemption begins with truth. Liam Ward." Every morning he woke before dawn, not to chase deals or stocks, but to make coffee, 2 cups always, the first for himself, the second for her. Because Maya was there, not as an employee, not as a secret, but as his partner, in life, in purpose, in peace. She managed the center's outreach program, her laughter filling the halls where silence once reigned. Children ran around her office, families thanked her, and the workers called her the heart of the place. And Liam? He never got tired of watching her do what she was born to do, bring life to places long left broken. One evening, as the sun dipped over the horizon, Maya stood on the balcony overlooking the coastal hills. The wind brushed against her skin, warm and soft. Liam joined her, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "You ever think about how we started?" he asked quietly. She laughed. "You mean when you thought I was just some housemaid who didn't know the difference between marble polish and floor wax?" He grinned. "I still say you used the wrong bottle." "I saved your floors," she teased. "And your soul." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, you did." Then his tone softened. I used to think love was about perfection, about finding someone who fits your world. He looked at her, eyes tender. But you showed me it's about finding someone who changes it. Maya smiled, the same smile that first disarmed him. Guess that makes us even. You gave me back hope I thought I'd buried with my brother. He reached for her hand. Then maybe we both cleaned up each other's mess. They stood there in silence, the sky awash in gold and rose, the kind of quiet that feels like healing. And in that stillness, he finally understood. The mansion didn't make him rich. She did. They say every story has a beginning and an end, but some don't. Some just keep unfolding quietly, not in boardrooms or headlines, but in the simple moments we never thought we'd get to have. Liam Ward hired a maid to clean his house, but she cleaned the emptiness in his heart, and together they built something stronger than success. Because sometimes, the greatest love stories aren't about falling, they're about rising. Would you forgive someone who hurt you if they were willing to rebuild everything they destroyed? Not with words, but with love? If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Every view helps us bring more stories of redemption, love, and second chances to life.